Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly show where I get to learn a little bit more about somebody else's perspective on movies. And joining me is the star, writer, and director of the new film Nora, Anna Campbell. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm so honored to be here. What a delight.
Absolutely. And I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, and then we'll get to started talking about Nora.
Yeah, well, I was a dorky kid who found a place for herself in the theater. I always
Mhm.
loved musicals and I always loved performing. And so I decided to make my life doing it. And I went back east to school, realized the East Coast was not for me, realized my love for film and for reaching a broader audience meant that I was still supposed to live on the West Coast where I'd grown up in Oregon. So I moved straight to
Mhm.
Los Angeles. And I spent 20 years there pursuing a career as an actor, and it was fine. I had, made my living doing it and made my health insurance every year, even though I had to have some side jobs. But at some point, I tired of just asking other people for jobs, and I realized that I wanted to be a part of the group of people who were choosing which stories were told. And as my confidence built, as I frankly just aged, I realized that the things that were happening to me were not being represented in film, and I got really excited about being able to tell those stories.
Awesome. Well, and I think that's a great segue as you do have a film coming out where you did have those reigns. And can you tell the audience a little bit about what Nora's about?
Yes, Nora is a story of a singer-songwriter who gives up on her dreams and leaves her Los Angeles to move back home to suburbia and focus on raising her child. But her dreams don't necessarily give up on her. So
Mm.
every time something big and emotional happens as you're re-entering a life that maybe used to be your own, meeting the PTA moms or dealing with your own family and re-entry
Yep.
there, and just the idea that we're re-entering, something that used to be a place where we belonged. Something big and emotional happens. It turns into a song in her head, and it turns into a music video on the screen. As a child of the MTV generation, getting to tell a version of a musical, but in a new format, was really exciting to me.
I thought that was definitely one of the most interesting and unique aspects of the film. And obviously, you said MTV obviously was a connection there. And
Yeah.
growing up when MTV still played a lot of music, I definitely remember those experiences of like waiting for music videos to drop and stuff like that. What was something that inspired you to channel that emotion and that expression through those music video sequences in the film?
Well, I love music in general. I think that if you're looking for a 2.5 to 5 minute version of someone interpreting your song so that the emotional state that you're in has an outlet to go to, music is just the exact right place. As a creator of long form entertainment in the form of film and television, right? There's nothing that gets quicker and more to the point than that single song.
Yeah.
But having grown up in an era where those songs were also identified with blunt imagery, right? And you could do anything. There were no rules. It didn't even have to connect up to the song in any way, shape, or form. You could truly let your imagination run wild. And some of our biggest directors to this day came out of that world, right? Gondry and all of these people who started their creativity in this world of true, pure imagination. And so being able to connect that back up with my own medium was an exciting prospect. And being, coming out of musical theater is my
Yeah.
first love. Um, that format sort of lost interest for me. I couldn't figure out why people would just burst into song.
Mm.
I love the doing of it and I love the singing of it, but it didn't ever click to me in quite the right human way. So finding a different way to incorporate that music into the film really excited me.
Awesome. And that's an interesting perspective in terms of channeling some of your other experiences with theater and channeling it in a way that felt a little bit more grounded and made sense in the context of life. And this is certainly a more unique kind of musical because no, people don't just start singing and dancing in the middle of having an interaction, but it is a musical expression of those same feelings. It's just more internal. And I guess, what do you feel like were some of the big influences in terms of telling a story about a musician who's struggling with this? That itch is still there, but you're trying to push it down in the background.
Well, if I'm to be honest, the real impetus for the film came from my experience, right?
Mm,
I left Los Angeles in the middle of the pandemic with my kids.
mm,
to move back home to Portland,
Okay.
Oregon, where I'm living and going back and forth now between the two worlds that I've straddled. And I get a little concerned about films that are too self-referential of our industry, right?
Yep.
I don't connect as well with those often as I do with something that shares my experience, but outside of the context of the really strange world that is making movies for a living, movies and television for a living. It's a very unique environment, but I think that music is a little bit more universal.
Mm,
And so I was looking for a way to translate my experience. And I'm not a songwriter, but I was a singer growing up, and I had really stopped using that as a part of my expression. And so being able to step back into this thing that had also been a piece
yeah.
of me, just as moving back home was really an interesting way to let it all, sort of pour out. And I did get to sing the songs on the album. I mean, it's just nuts
Mm,
what I got to do on my first film here. But I think that that was why I really wanted to translate it into a genre that I loved deeply, but that also gave me a chance to look at an experience that I felt was more universal than I'd seen represented in film,
mm.
but through a metaphor, right? Through a slightly different perspective.
Well, and that's also very interesting too, because I feel like a lot of filmmakers love telling stories about making movies. And obviously for like big film fans, it's that insider baseball where it's like, ooh, this is really exciting to peek behind the curtain, but also could be potentially alienating for people that don't love film that much in
Yes.
terms of seeing behind the curtains and seeing that. And it's true, everybody loves music. I was sitting here doing a little bit of writing, just listening to music before this, and it's just like I love music, and I really appreciated being able to connect with that experience in this film as well. And obviously you have a lot of control in this film, being the one that's anchoring the screen in front of it, writing it, directing it. What do you feel like was the biggest rewarding experience that you got from making this film?
I mean, to be able to have that much creative control in your first
Mm,
project and not have a million other voices screaming about ways that it should be done. And I love collaborating, don't get me wrong. And
yeah.
I got incredibly lucky. The crew and the cast that I got to work with were so on board to bring their own bits of themselves. And it's infinitely better because of everybody who was involved with it, getting to add to the story. But there's such a relief in all of the departments
Mm,
sort of agreeing on what the ultimate,
yeah.
decision making is. So I always laugh that I think it actually made it easier for me to talk to myself about a decision that was being made as opposed to everybody else. But that's not a normal perspective on it. I think that the challenges of making your first film are where to put your resources and how to decide how to spend the $3 that you have, and where to allocate those resources.
Yep.
But we were scrappy and we had a really good time. And I think we got lucky because we were shooting primarily during the pandemic. People were eager to work, and we got a lot of
Yeah.
favors for a first-time director that I hopefully will never have to use again because I'd love to be able to pay artists what they're worth, I believe really firmly, and that is my ultimate end goal. So,
Well, and having watched the film and having had a really great experience watching the film, you can tell it's one very personal, and you can feel that expression coming through, and it makes sense being the one that wrote it, is directing it, and then bringing it to life on screen. But you can also tell like this isn't a movie that was made with hundreds of millions of dollars or even millions of dollars. It's a film that makes a lot out of a little. And I think that was something really inspiring, seeing how creative this film still was, even though you can tell like this wasn't a big studio film, and it still was able to hit with a lot of emotion and having an inspiring story too.
oh, it's so kind. Well, I grew up in the era of independent film actually making it
Yeah.
to the big screen. I'm not afraid of a small budget. I am so much more interested in finding someone's heart. I keep
Yeah.
referencing early Kevin Smith, right? There was nothing more visceral. And don't get me
Mm,
wrong, love him to this day, but the idea that you could get into Sundance with a movie that was just about standing outside of a convenience store.
yeah.
I love that truth of that experience that that person had is fed to me. And to me, that's no different from the experience of watching the incredible films like Sinners, which are
Yeah.
truly a personal reckoning, right? That's what I love, is
Mm,
getting to see somebody else's version of the world offered to me. And I think that
mhm.
that's what we were trying to do here. We had a group of dreamers and artists who were having an opportunity to step a little bit further than their comfort zone and push themselves just a little bit further to get behind this story of generalized dreamer having to wonder whether or not making a life in the arts was still going to be a part of their life after, a transition moment like that, and after having children, or, I always compare it to taking care of a parent, or that moment where you're like, wait, is this ever going to be enough? Am I going to save for retirement? Right?
Mm,
I don't, even though the film happens to be about a mom and that's such an easy and obvious audience for us, I really think the film is about dreamers more broadly. Anybody
mm,
who's wondered what they wanted to do with their life and wondered if they could get back to it. I think there's always a way, and it may not look the way that you thought that it would, but that's the people I hope to inspire, I guess. And that's what film has always done for me.
Well, and it's very obvious the central themes of chasing your dreams and reckoning with that. And it's like trying to chase it in some way, shape, or form, or jumping headlong back into it. And it's also interesting seeing the other layers of, returning home. Because
Yes.
like I know I'm from a small town in New Jersey
Hmm.
where jokingly called it the Haddon Dome because there's like six generations of the same families who live in Haddon Township.
Yeah.
And like I got out. Like
Yes.
I'm not leaving New Jersey. I have no real interest in doing that. I'm a Jersey boy through and through. But
Yes.
like being able to go out and do your own thing, and there's always that, like if I ever had to go home or go back to where I'm from, and it's just like, did I give up? Or having those kinds of feelings. And that's a very universal thing. And also I appreciate that you, like I mentioned, I'm from New Jersey. So Kevin Smith speaks to me, being a fellow Jerseyan, and
Yes.
I was a kid throughout the 90s. And
Yep.
so like I didn't really experience a lot of the independent film movement in the
At the
90s.
time. Yeah.
But I remember going into college and really getting into film, and you watch films from obviously like Kevin Smith making a movie with like nothing and just shooting at his job at night. And you know, films like from Quentin Tarantino,
Yeah.
or even directors who have become so much bigger at this point, but all started cutting their teeth on those small films. And I go to the movies for any type of movie.
Yes.
And it's nice being able to see a smaller film on the screen, even though it's a rarer occasion at this point.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge, but I do really appreciate watching your film. And I always like to wrap up my discussions talking to like an actor or filmmaker by asking, if you had to pitch this film to the audience,
Mm.
what's the one reason why people should go check out Nora?
I believe that you should be allowed to feel more.
Mhm.
I believe that you should have an opportunity to wonder about the direction that your life has taken and choose whether or not you need to readjust. I believe that there's no such thing as feeling too much. I think that we've all been stifled in having to narrow our vision to be in the world comfortably. And I'd like us all to feel okay and find a safe place to be a little bit more uncomfortable and be a little bit more truthful with ourselves about what got left behind and what we want back.
Awesome. Well, Anna, where can people check out the film?
I'm so excited about this. So, to your point about distribution these days,
Mm,
independent film is in a really precarious moment, I think I'd say.
mm,
We're incredibly lucky because we were picked up by a platform called Veeps, veeps.com. It's primarily a live streaming source for concerts and comedy
mm,
sources, but they really love the musical component of the film
mm.
and took us on as one of the very first of their narrative features to be on the platform. And in a world where the big streamers are paying less and less and less for independent films because there's no obligation for them to pay
Yeah.
more, the opportunity to have a true profit share where the artist is actually going to benefit from how well it does, as will the platform, means we
Mhm.
all of our hearts are in this in a very different way. And so we're so excited to be able to bring it to audiences and to your audience, and also to
Mhm.
just have the opportunity to possibly reach the really big audiences of yore. And it will mean, if we can, find ways to make film profitable again, that we can make more
Yeah.
of them, that we can save our art form and truly get to spend more of our time telling the stories that matter and stretching people's awareness and comfort and cultural flexibility in the ways that I think only film can. So
Awesome.
veeps.com/Nora, that's where we are.
And how long will the film be available on Veep?
Yes, the film will be available starting May 24th and stays on the platform until June 23rd. So there's a significant amount of time. We're doing a live streaming event on through the channel right after the premiere. So it goes live at 5 p.m. Eastern and about 5 p.m. Pacific time
Mm,
on May 24th, and then we'll do a live event about 7 o'clock on that same day. So if you're on the platform and want to watch it live, we'll be there
awesome.
then. But that additional content, sort of like DVD extras, we're including
Mm,
full-length videos, music videos,
awesome.
and some interview tracks and some other things that will all be available on the platform as well, including the StreamYard that'll be able to be seen even if you don't make it to opening night.
That is very exciting.
It's
And
so
you all, yes, you all should go check out Nora. It's a wonderful little film and has a lot of personality and certainly hits. And I really appreciated the opportunity to check it out. Now, Anna, are you ready for the audience to learn a little bit more about you and
I'm
your love of movies?
slash nervous because I'm a big dork here. Get ready. This is exciting.
Well, there you go. And let's start with that question everybody likes to be asked, which what's your favorite film?
So I'm going to be blunt and honest about this. My favorite
Uh-huh.
film, because you want to find the most dramatic and most like filmmakery answer, but the film that hit me the most the first time I watched it was Newsies. And
Okay.
maybe that's the musical theater geek in me, but
Mm,
it hit me at the right point in my life where a whole bunch of boys dancing on the screen in front of me, combining sort of my childhood and a world that I was moving into at the same time. That's very retrospective, obviously, but I can still quote that movie backwards and forwards to this day. And I'm not ashamed to say that it's the first movie I fell in love with.
awesome. I've never done musical theater or anything like that, but I do love a good musical.
Ah,
Um, and to the point like I do love music and being able to like combine those things and any I could pass on a lot of flaws in a movie if it's a musical because like if
yeah.
I'm enjoying the music and the experience and everything, it's like maybe the plot didn't make the most sense or such like that. It's like, well, I'm still having a great time, so I
Oh,
certainly
100%.
appreciate
And
that.
I'm not the look, Newsies is a pretty terrible example of a musical in all of the right ways, but we've had some really cool filmmakers try to revolutionize it. Damien Chazelle with La La Land, and
Yeah.
it's an art form that has a lot of flexibility within it. So
Mhm.
I'm honored to be a part of this long, bizarre
Yeah.
transition.
Well, there you go. Now, Anna, what's your earliest memory of going to the movies?
I'm pretty sure that the first film that I saw in the theater must have been a re-release when I looked back on it because it didn't make any sense of oh gosh, where it is, the Disney movie with the songs and the cartoons. Where is it in my head? I just had it. Do you know the one the oh my gosh, where is it? Where Mickey Mouse does the conducting and the one
Fantasia?
Fantasia, there it
Yeah.
is. Thank you. I'm pretty sure because I think that came out in the 70s sometime, but it must have had a re-release in the mid 80s, and my grandmother took me to see it. And I remember watching the part where the broom comes to life and Mickey
Yeah.
messes everything up and just being like, what is happening? And everything is huge in front of me and just being completely transported and a little bit scared.
Yep. Well, and like I feel like Disney has been such a big part in so many people's childhoods.
Yeah.
And back then it was like, we're going to re-release this every so often because like yes, we want to make some more money off of this and
Yeah.
also connect with a whole new generation of kids.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember growing up as a child in the 90s and being like, get this on VHS before it goes back in the vault.
Yes,
And
100%. I think I had most of them.
yeah, and now there's no vault. It's called
No.
Disney Plus.
Yeah,
So
it
there you
is.
go.
So we sort of have them all and we sort of own nothing.
The the kids will never have to experience that. But what if I want to watch Beauty and the Beast? Well, you better have gotten on VHS before it disappeared until
Exactly.
like
Can
10
I
years from
borrow?
now.
I'm gonna go down the street to my neighbor and borrow their VHS copy. I
Yep,
swear I'll bring it back.
there you go. Now, Hannah, do you have a particular favorite genre of movies?
Well, obviously, we've talked a lot about musicals, but if I'm
Mhm.
actually to pick a genre that almost always gets me, it's the psychological thriller. I
Okay.
really love a deep exploration of of human nature, and I think I love watching someone try to figure out what's going on and someone in an unusual mental state. So, not the true crime things necessarily, but making sure those are the films that over and over again I go back to because it's like I just want to watch these people actually have to live through an experience, right? So I think psychological thriller, although I found myself as when I first became a mom struggling a lot with horror and psychological thrillers, which were two genres that I loved, and they've kind of come back into my life as they've gotten older, and I'm less terrified
Yeah.
all the time that I'm going to do something wrong. So yeah,
It makes things a little bit more real
yeah,
and it just like
exactly, exactly,
maybe a little too real.
way too
Um
rich. Yeah.
and I could also imagine like trying to, not scar your children
Yeah.
by watching them for your
Yes, I
children.
have beautiful, delicate little girls, and they are very clear when something is too much, right?
Mhm.
I took them to see If in the movie theater. I don't know if you saw beautiful. I really
Yeah.
love the Krasinski movie, and I thought it was so magical. And all of a sudden, I look over, and one of them is just bawling hysterically, and I was like, "Do
Oh,
you climb into my lap?" And so, sure enough, we had a beautiful, magical moment, but it was a lot of big emotions for a small child
yeah.
to live through. And I try to really honor their availability for how far they like to be stretched to.
Yeah, I definitely had some moments as a child when my brother slash cousins tried to scar me with, like The Mummy or
Oh,
Lost World Jurassic Park, and we'll never forgive them for that.
yeah,
Um,
great films, but maybe not at the wrong age. Yeah.
I love The Mummy now, and I could watch that anytime I want, but I'm a big baby, and I was a child, like, was terrified. So, you
So
know,
great. Side note, the first time I saw Thriller was at my friend Eileen's house during a
mhm.
sleepover. And I had never
uh,
seen anything like it before and had not been remotely indoctrinated into pop culture. And I mean, I actually think I slept fine that night, but it was the most shocking thing I'd ever seen. So understanding that, was I ready for that
and the
yet?
story in that video is like it gets you.
Explicit.
It comes
Oh,
out of
yeah.
nowhere and
Yes.
scares you. And
And then they're dancing.
yes. And then they're dancing, and then you just have Vincent Price just laying down some very eerie dialogue too. And I actually got to see that in a theater once because
No.
they played that before The House with a Clock in Its Walls
Yes.
when they got released and they put it in 3D. And I'm
Oh,
like, I'm not a fan of 3D. And
no,
I'm
I
just
don't
sitting
know.
there, I'm like, well, I'm gonna deal with this so I could watch Michael Jackson. I could get through Thriller here.
Oh my
So,
gosh, that had to be very overwhelming. Not meant for the big screen, right? Not quite, no.
especially when it's like coming at you.
No.
I don't need movies to come at me.
They come out of the grave and they're like, oh dear God. That's
It
too
had that
much.
vibe. It certainly did. Um, Now, Anna, do you have a particular favorite filmmaker?
Oh gosh, that list is kind of a little bit too long to get into. I want to
Fair.
Greta Gerwig for revolutionizing the way
Okay.
female filmmakers can actually also be blockbuster successes. I know she's not the
Mhm.
first, and but I like that we're no longer saying, "Oh, female filmmaker Greta Gerwig," right? That
Mhm.
we're saying filmmaker Greta Gerwig. Gondry is amazing. I really love most of Christopher Nolan's stuff, though some of it gets a little bit heady. Early Todd Haynes blows me out of the
Mhm.
water, and yeah, I mean, that's a pretty solid list of single favorites there.
I I don't see movies multiple times in theaters very often because I try to see a lot of different
Yeah.
movies. But I saw Lady Bird multiple times in a
Oh
theater.
my gosh, right?
I love that movie so
Me
much.
too. Me
And
too.
that just struck a very specific point. I remember taking my mom to see Little Women.
Yes.
That was a special moment.
Yes.
Actually, I'm realizing now, and then I also saw Barbie multiple times in theater. So
Yes.
I guess I see Greta Gerwig movies multiple times in
Isn't that so
theaters.
funny? And I remember, so
Mhm.
I definitely saw Titanic and Romeo and Juliet. Like that was,
Yeah,
that moment when I was 17, 18, when I was like the hot boy. I'm gonna
Leo.
go see it a bunch of times. I don't care what's happening to him on screen.
Yes.
Makes me sound like a huge early Leo fan, which is not specifically the case, but he's great. Don't get me wrong. Not gonna knock
Yeah.
him. But that anytime something brings me back to want to see it again, it's always a surprise though, because it's not the ones you expect. It's not the
Mhm.
biggest, bright, like sometimes those movies are too much, right, to want to re-experience.
Mhm.
Sometimes it takes just a little bit lighter. The last movie, I would see Sinners again in the theater. I thought that movie was spectacular, though I've only seen it once. But I actually saw The Menu. Do you remember The Menu
Oh,
at the
yes. Mhm.
end of the pandemic? I saw it very much by myself, masked, and that was the first movie in a really long time that I was like, took a friend back to because I was like, you have to see this movie. I'm so sorry. It's exactly what I want to speak to right now.
Yeah.
So it's always surprising to me what's going to hit at any given moment. I don't think it's as easy as only the good ones.
I always go to the movies with my friends for my birthday, and I'm a November baby. And I saw the menu with my friends for my birthday when that came out, and that was a great experience. And then, too, with specifically with Barbie, I took a trip to New York City with a couple of my friends from the website that I write for because we went to go see Oppenheimer on
Yeah.
the Lincoln Square IMAX, the
Hmm.
largest IMAX screen in the country.
Oh my
And then we
gosh.
also saw Barbie. And I knew my wife really wanted to see Barbie too. So I literally went to go see Barbie the next day with my wife. And it was one of my favorite experiences because, like, I was sitting there watching the first time, like, oh my God, Jess would laugh so hard at this.
Yeah.
Like knowing
Yes.
what exactly she would appreciate. So seeing it the second time and just like looking over at her when I knew a joke was coming and seeing
Yes.
how she would react to it
But
was a
this is
fun
what movies can
experience.
do. Movies bring us together. We want to share those experiences.
Mhm.
We want to be able to come together in community. And that's where the death of movie theaters is a really scary prospect that I'm fighting with all my heart. Even as someone who's
Yeah.
on the way to digital release, I was so thrilled that Nora was able to go to theaters in a few cities. It's an
Mhm.
important experience. It just is.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
thinking about in front of the camera, who are some of your favorite actors or actresses?
I mean, I'm going to go straight to Meryl Streep. She's
Okay.
100% the
Yep.
reason that I went to Vassar, and I did not
Mhm.
follow her to the Yale School of Drama, which I don't think I regret at all, actually. I, funnily enough, did a summer program there between my junior and senior year of high school. Like, I
Mhm.
really was like taking being an actor seriously, right? I was a
Yeah.
baby. But all of the other kids who had been there had already been through like huge summer drama programs, which we just didn't have in Oregon. And I was the least informed and the least educated actor there. And they made that very clear to me. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm connecting with your experience of taking this way too seriously. And I'm proud of that. That was a decision that I made early on to say, I want to bring heart to this and I want to bring something beyond just emotional pain and death. So Meryl's way up there, obviously the Kate Blanchetts, but we
Yeah.
can we can go back. I think Kate Winslet's career has been spectacular.
Mhm.
And I'll never not be in love with Christian Bale to whatever degree, although he's made some very scary choices since Newsies happened. But I
Yes.
think, yeah, it's been an interesting moment where we started to combine super modernized acting with the truly trained actors, and I still am really attracted to people who don't just walk up there and do it, right? Who
Yeah.
have put some real thought into how the story is to be told and how they're going to bring the consistency to the character and transform themselves into something slightly other than what they are. So that is my
Which
standards.
Streep is one of the greatest of all time.
I
And
mean, how can you knock it? It's kind of a boring answer, right? But she's good. And this is the other thing. I think my final answer is it's somewhere between Meryl Streep and Tina Fey,
okay.
because who's not the best actress in the world, but neither one of them gives a crap what I think about their performance. And
Mhm.
that's when a good performance can happen, when they're truly bringing a piece of themselves that they would like to present, as opposed to a self-conscious version of acting. Yeah. There we go. Final answer. Tina Fey.
Being a big fan of Mean Girls and also 30 Rock, Tina Fey is amazing.
She's amazing. She's amazing. And talk about, I mean, I really do feel like I got an education from the way she and Amy Poehler and that whole group just approached, what do I
Yeah.
want to see? Right? What do I
Yeah.
want to make? What's not out there yet? And why isn't it out there? Should we just make it? And we think of them now as the grand dames of this, but I've been listening to Amy Poehler's podcast and they all came up together. They
Mhm.
formed a group and they brought it up together. And that's what you want, the community to come along with you on that ride.
Absolutely. Now, what's a film that you feel like you could watch literally every day?
I mean, can I go back to Newsies? Is that rude?
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I
that's perfectly
really,
fine.
the first time I tried to show it to my two little girls a little bit early, and there's an early scene where a car is on fire and it's like dramatic, and it was too much for them, so we had to turn it off. And I remember being disappointed, not
Mhm.
because I thought they didn't like the movie, but because I didn't get to finish watching the film. So I think that, and the other one that I've watched on repeat that I probably could just watch every day is Inception. Again,
Okay.
probably a dull answer, but oh my gosh, the layers in that film are just extra special.
It's an incredible film. And that was the moment where you realize it's like you can make a blockbuster movie that's huge and has big scale and that also makes you think a lot. And
Same with Sinners. Same
yep.
exact thing. I walked out of that film and I was like, see, you don't have to do something. You just have to do
Yeah.
what you want more than anything and what
Mhm.
you want to see more than anything. Oh, spectacular filmmaking.
The amount of times I've talked to people about Sinners since I saw it at a press screening is a lot.
It's
It's a large number.
Yeah, it's an
So,
incredible film. I was blown away. I felt like I learned something. I felt like I
yeah,
was thrown into a culture that was not my own in a way that made me so excited to
mhm,
be immersed truly in something. Yeah.
absolutely. And what's a film that connect closely to because it relates to another interest of yours?
Hmm. I guess I'm going back to the musicals again. You
Mhm.
know, I'm gonna throw La La Land out there because I think that when I watched that film without realizing it, it gave me permission to head towards making Nora. It was many years ago, and it was many years before that happened. But uh, again, the intersection of music and film. I mean, it's very obvious when it comes into
Yeah.
it when starting out in musicals. But the other thing that I would say is, I recently got to do a little article about the 10 albums that meant the most to me in connection with how I got to making Nora. And
Mhm.
realizing how many of the films in the late 90s in particular had insanely good pop culture reference sound.
Yes.
The
Yep.
Reality Bites, the, Romeo and Juliet, like we all
Mhm.
owned those CDs for 16.99, right, which is more than we're spending on movie tickets these days. And we would listen to them on repeat. And it wasn't just that we were listening to the music, it was that we were also replaying the film in our head. And again,
Mhm.
that intersection of how music can help movies and movies can benefit from music, I think. That's a
I
broad answer, I guess, but
One, La La Land. I remember seeing that, and at that time, I had been dating somebody who was a musical theater person,
uh-huh.
and like it was a special experience for her,
Yeah.
on a different kind of level than I had, but was still something that was a really special experience for me because I absolutely loved it. And it's been
Yeah.
really cool watching more films like An American in Paris and The Red Shoes and realizing where a lot of that comes from
Yes.
and just adds layers to what Damien Chazelle was doing with it. Cause like I can appreciate somebody who's like a student of the game and
Yes.
is very influenced by other films and being able to show those homages and passions on the screen. And
Yes.
then also like the soundtracks. I listened to so many movie soundtracks.
Yeah.
And like in my office at work, because I work at a college,
Yeah.
and I for my whole first year working there, I had nothing on any of my walls. I'm like, I really feel like I should have something in here. And so a section of my office has records hanging on the wall, and I have like Saturday Night, Saturday Night Fever,
Oh my
and
God.
yep. Oh, I'm a big disco fan, and I love the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
And just the amount of times I listened to my Shrek soundtrack CD when I was a kid is
Right.
an insane amount of times.
I had that
So I
one too. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
But isn't this amazing? Because look at this. That dates us so precisely in time. I'm clearly
Yes.
like 7 years younger than or older than you, right? Because Reality Bites was exactly that far back, and I definitely had
Mhm.
Trek, but it was a little later. But that's so funny how they capture a moment in time too
Mhm.
in a period of development, don't they? Yeah, so cool.
The the just the smash mouth of it all was such a very specific time.
Yep.
Um
That was like
and
one summer.
it's just like I can't listen to All Star without thinking one of Mystery Men and then also of Shrek. So
Yes, so
those
true.
kind of special moments for sure.
Yeah.
Now, who's a movie character that you connect with on a personal level?
Um, the one that came most immediately to mind was Joe March, right?
Okay.
And I'll say that in also right from Little Women,
Hmm.
but my first experience of Little Women was the Winona Ryder version of it,
Yep.
right? Again, Christian Bale, just bring it
Makes a
on
lot of
back.
sense.
Same,
Yep.
same era. And that was the formative experience of beyond reading the book, how that story was told to me. But I don't think it makes a difference which interpretation of her you use, right?
Yeah.
The idea that this was a person caught at a time when there was a prescriptive way of being, and she was just not going to do it that
Yeah.
way was so spectacular. And I think that's how I choose to live my life. And I'm actually pleased that there are many interpretations of her as it goes along because there's never going to be one representation that's perfect, but that we keep revisiting that woman, I think is indicative to what, the female subsection of the population, section
Yeah.
of the population, we're not even a subsection, are we? We're most of them. We need to be told it's okay
Mhm.
if the way everybody else is doing it is not quite right for you. Again, time to feel more, time to expand your sense of it.
It's such a special story too, because that has been remade for so many generations on film. Like
Each one, yeah.
I recently watched the Katharine Hepburn
Yes.
Little Women for the first time, and I'm like,
Yes, of course.
I'm sitting there like, this is so weird looking at Katharine Hepburn being like a teenager. Um,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
just being, and it's still very Katharine Hepburn. Obviously the one that really struck me was Greta Gerwig's,
Greta
and
Gerwig, yeah.
I am such a huge Saoirse Ronan fan,
Yes.
and I love her so much. She's my favorite, one of my favorite actors,
Yep.
and to the point where I remember seeing the film My Old Ass that came
Yeah.
out last year, which I
So
saw
good.
twice because one, I saw it at a press screening with my wife like a month early.
Oh my gosh, love
Absolutely
the ass.
loved it.
It's so
That
good.
whole entire theater was bawling
Yep.
into that movie. And then my friend Joe picked to go see that for his birthday. So I wound up seeing that again. And I distinctly remember the moment where the little brother puts the Saoirse Ronan shrine up on the
Yes.
wall because it's going to be. My wife turned to me. I'm like, "Is that your room?"
It's so good.
And I'm just like, "Yep, got me good."
She's
But
incredible. She's
she's
incredible.
incredible, and I love her interpretation of Joe in that film. Has such an amazing cast from top to bottom. Even just having like Bob Odenkirk popping up and being like, "My Little Women," I'm like, "Damn, got
Yep.
me."
Florence in there. I mean, it
Yeah,
really was the launch for a whole new generation of movie
yeah,
stars. And I know Saoirse had been around for a little bit and had done some amazing things before then
yeah,
as well. It's not that, but it is interesting that you're right. Every single generation has had an interpretation
yeah.
of how do we form family, how do we form connection and community
Mm,
in that community of women. So very good point. Very good point.
absolutely,
And yes, My Old Ass is so weirdly good. Why has
so good.
everybody not seen that dumb movie? It's so good.
And it's like an hour and 25-ish minutes. It's
Easy minute.
lean.
Yeah.
And that trailer, because like I remember sitting and watching the movie and being like, this is not quite what the trailer really makes it seem like Aubrey Plaza is going to be like a humongous part of this movie. But
Has
I
to
fell
sell
in
it.
love with
Yeah.
every second of what the movie actually was. And her moments on screen just had that much more impact.
Yes.
And now I can't think of Justin Bieber without thinking of that movie now. Because that one sequence in it.
I feel like it was, and I think it was probably actually made for middle-aged women like myself, like more than it was for not, but it was such an amazing, super current take
Yes.
on the teen, like coming of age story and the teen, right?
Yeah.
And to combine that with, a sort of reinterpretation of it from my perspective. I just thought I thought it was a spectacularly simply done,
Mhm.
beautiful, like deeply engaging film. I couldn't believe how much I was in it completely. Given again the budget, it doesn't matter if the storytelling is good and the actors are that on it because there's not a weak link on that
Yeah.
entire cast. I'm so on board, so on board.
It it just made the experience so much better watching that with like seven early 30s men for a
Dudes, yeah.
birthday party, which was really funny
I love that choice. I love it so much.
on top of that.
There's
Because
hope for humanity.
he it was funny because it was either that or Conclave. And he
Huh.
remembered me telling me how much I love that my old ass. He's like, let's go see that. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting choice, but
I
and it
really
was
did like Conclave. Like that is not. I was surprised how much I
yeah,
loved that film. Although the twist, I was like, huh, okay, there we go. That's fine. Sure, okay, we'll go that direction then. But I think My Old Ass for a Birthday Party is a way, way, way better choice.
yes. I
Yeah,
wound up seeing Conclave the next day anyway, so it
it's
all
pretty
worked
good,
out.
right?
I
It
saw
was
them anyway.
surprisingly good. I can't believe how
Yes.
engaging it was. Yeah.
That music in that, and then just the all the production design, and I'm a
So
big
beautiful.
Ray Fiennes fan, and the whole cast was fantastic.
Yeah. And
Um,
those were actors you would not expect to all put together in one movie together. You know,
Mhm.
Lithgow next to Fiennes, I was like, I mean, I know he's Shakespeare trained, like, don't get me wrong, I
Yeah,
understand that's his background, but it was the best casting of all of the people we've been being like, where did you go? Come back to us, please, right? And all in the same absolutely spectacularly, beautifully told story. So,
love
yeah,
some Tucci just
yeah, bring
sprinkled
me a
in there.
Tucci any day of the week. It's
There you
fine.
go.
Rossellini getting to do whatever that was, so
Yeah.
good.
Now, what's a film that you love that you feel like would surprise people?
Besides Newsies,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Newsies is still a real, God, I've answered that for every single one of these questions.
Hey, there's no rules on this show. So,
Oh, you know what? Velvet Goldmine had a, maybe that wouldn't surprise, I don't know. I mean, that movie spent a really long time sitting on my mental shelf. I have seen that movie probably 20 times. It was, sort of mid-college when it came out, or maybe it was right before, but then that was when it really struck me. And it was again a sense of sort of self-discovery and permission to explore outside the norms. Also, using music in a pretty
yeah.
intense way, I just realized. And it made glitter cool again, which was really neat. And also used spectacular imagery, but instead of going in a traditional visual format, it sort of took a deeper cut pop culture reference and maybe almost like more magazine sort of editorial approach to it. And obviously that's, Haynes I put on my list, but that film in particular, I think is vastly underrated and probably should be watched by more people who are having a moment of self-doubt and wonder. I think it's a beautiful film.
Well, it's going on my
Christian
watch
Bale again, I
list.
just realized.
One, it's going on my watch list because I have not seen this film,
Oh, I'm
and
so excited for
I'm
you.
looking at the cast and like, yeah, I think the first immediate thing was like, oh, it's Christian Bale
Yeah.
again.
Ewan McGregor.
But
Yeah,
Hugh
very
McGregor,
good.
I love Toni Collette. She can
Oh yeah.
literally do anything.
Jonathan Rhys
Like
Meyers all the way. Yeah. He's been
anytime.
gone for a minute. Where did he go? I love him. Yeah.
I saw him pop up in I forget the name of the thriller it was, but like he was like a central
Oh
lead in
yeah.
a
That
like
was a
one of
couple of
those
years
like
ago.
I forgot what the name of it was. It was within the past couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't seen him pop up in a whole lot of things.
He's talented. I
Lately.
like him. Bring him back. Maybe he's
There you go.
impossible. I don't know. I really like him though.
There you
So
go.
highly recommend. I'm so excited to hear what you think of that one.
There you go. But Anna, my last question for you is what do you love most about movies?
I love the transportation. I
Mhm.
love sitting in a darkened space and being allowed to step outside of the current reality, not that it's necessarily bad, into a completely different one. Being transported through time and space and cultural boundaries and being exposed to visual formats and audio experiences that I might never have gotten a chance to live through. I think it's the art form that combines more of your senses than any other. Although I'm not a huge proponent of adding smell to it, I don't think that's not what I'm saying. I
Smell of
think
vision.
it's smell of vision. I mean, even the rumble seats, I'm like, I feel like just add some more bass and we'll be fine, right? But I think that there's nothing that can compare to sitting with a bunch of people and having a shared experience that nevertheless can be experienced differently and having the opportunity to grow because of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said. And I do love the ability to just be transported and completely enveloped. And I was just writing about this for an article for my website of it's so much different watching a movie in a theater than at home
Yes.
because in a theater you are culturally and societally expected to unplug because like
Yes.
you don't want to be that person that's sitting there on your phone during a
Yes.
movie theater, but like you put it away and you're there. It's a dark room, you're just enveloped in it. And
Yes.
you have to be much more conscious at home and just like really making sure that you're focusing, but just being completely engulfed in an experience is something special.
Yeah. And whether you're sharing it or not, I love being the only person in a movie theater at, like noon on a Tuesday. That's actually one of my favorite experiences
Mm,
too. Because again, it's just that just stop, right? I could either get a $300 massage or I could spend $17 on this movie ticket and really just stop for a second. And I think it's a really powerful experience and something that, generationally, I didn't have a cell phone until after college, right? I think I got one on a semester abroad trip, but even then, I didn't have a full-time cell phone until after that. So we would disconnect and wander out into the world
Yeah,
and have to find a payphone to get back in touch. And I think that maybe that can be what we translate the film going experience to and recommend it for people who haven't grown up being able to truly just let their brain be completely
yeah,
absorbed into a non focused experience like that. Yeah.
absolutely. And how I always like to wrap up my show is have my guest ask me a question. So, Anna, what would you like to ask the Wasteland reviewer?
What is the most surprising film that you love? Have you been asked that 14 times before? Because I can switch directions.
No, that's okay. I've been asked it probably a couple of times. Like this is, I've done this show like 270 episodes. So,
You're
so
magic. Look at you go.
um, there, I actually own this too. Um, it is not within arm's reach, so I'm not going to grab it real quick. But I remember getting a free pass to because like don't remember when they stopped doing this, but AMC used to send out like, hey, a free screening for Stubbs members and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I got a free screening to Me Before You,
Yes.
that film with Sam Claflin and Amelia Clark.
Yes.
And I'm like, not usually the kind of movie I would go see, but it's free, and I'm not going to say no to a free movie. And I had a friend of mine, Kevin, come with me because I had another guest, like I had a plus one. So the two of us, just two 20-something-year-old guys showing up to the screening of Me
Love
Before
this.
You. And that movie got me
Yeah.
because like I had just recently got into Game of Thrones, and I wasn't the biggest fan of Amelia Clark from Game of Thrones at that point, but like
Yeah.
she's so damn charming,
She's
which actually
adorable.
was kind of
Yeah.
frustrating watching a lot of Game of Thrones where it's just like I feel like you're not leaning into her strengths, which is that she is absolutely adorable
She's the
and
cutest thing
is
ever.
she is so, like within like 5 minutes of that movie, I'm just like, wow, she showed more personality in this
Yeah.
movie than like all the Game of Thrones. And
Yeah.
Sam Claflin, who's in a wheelchair in this movie,
Yes.
is so damn charming though.
Yes.
There's a moment where he absolutely destroys oh, what's the actor's name? I just know him as Neville, from
Yeah,
Harry
Dave.
Potter.
Yes.
Um, and because he's like the kind of absent boyfriend that's kind of
Right.
like a little self-absorbed, and Sam Claflin just like throws a dig at him and just has a smirk on his face. I'm just like, he
Yeah.
knew exactly what he was doing here. That movie charmed the socks off of me. I knew exactly where that was going and knew that it was just going to be like, well, we're going for some tears here. But
Yeah.
like, I couldn't help but like it a lot. So I own
Yeah.
it. So that's
Yeah.
usually my answer to that question.
I love that answer to that question. Can I ask you one other one since I asked
Sure.
one that's more been used? What's the worst movie you've ever seen? You've probably been asked that too, but
I have seen some bad movies.
yeah.
Because the thing is, like, I'll watch anything.
Yeah.
I watch like recent wise. I'm gonna do this one for my wife. There was a movie called The Swing of Things. There it was a comedy that came out within that was probably early pandemic release. I
Okay.
remember watching it at home, and it was a comedy, and I use air quotes because like I don't know how funny it was. There is a recurring like rapey dolphin gag that
No.
keeps popping up, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
why is this here? Why
Yeah.
is this a thing?
Guys, you
Um,
missed the mark on that one.
but I do have to say, from a technical standpoint, I've watched some Ed Wood movies, and they're not great.
They're not
But
great. Yeah.
but after watching Tim Burton's Ed Wood, I feel like I can't be mean to him at that point because like he just loved movies so much. He just
Yeah.
wasn't very good at making them. Plan 9 from Outer Space is like, what is this? Like, what am I
But you're
watching?
but you're right. But they're made with a weird amount of heart that if you could understand what that heart meant, which is hard,
Yes.
you'd
Yep.
be like, yes, I'm totally all in. This is fantastic. Let's go. It's interesting though, because just because you can make a movie doesn't mean that you necessarily have all of the skills or story development
Mm,
or even sort of assets or things that you need in the right room. And I think that until you've tried it, you may not understand that. And I think that's the hardest part about independent filmmaking right now, right? The heyday for me was at a time where it was still really hard to get the resources together
yeah,
to film. And now anyone can shoot one on their iPhone and think that they're a filmmaker. Yeah.
yeah,
And those two things do not equate. And I feel really excited that the film that I was able to put together rose to my expectations, even though it was low budget and we had to be clever and resourceful about it. But I'd really love to just sort of encourage filmmakers to really consider their audiences they're going into it
yes,
and their outlets, right? Where they're going to be able to get this to people and, get help in the areas that you think that you might need it, right? Um, I think that it would be better for the art form in general if more people spent more time making a better film. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
All right.
But
A little rant
Anna,
over.
thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for your time. And I really appreciate you coming on and, talking about movies and also being able to talk to you about Nora.
Thank you so much, Shane. It's really, really nice to meet a fellow cinephile and to get to talk movies for an hour. So, my absolute pleasure. See you soon.
Yes. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.